Hi everyone, Rhonda Craig here, ready for lesson number 41. Today we're going to talk about the trial of Jesus. Last time we talked about his Last Supper, Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples when they observed the Passover meal together, and he instituted what we have come to know as the communion or the Lord's Supper. When that was over, and he had already told Peter that he would deny him 3 times, and Peter, of course, said, "Oh, no, I'm ready to go to prison with you." He also indicated that he knew that he would be betrayed by one of his own. And they were all grieved about that, and they wanted to know who that was. But when Judas got up and left, Judas Iscariot, he apparently was the treasurer of the group. And I always felt really bad for Judas because I felt like he loved the Lord to begin with and wanted to be a part of that group, and he struggled to overcome his own greed. But I believe it's the Gospel of John that says he was a thief and that he had helped himself to the purse that because he took care of the money for the group, buying the food and doing whatever they needed. And that sort of gave me a little bit different feeling for Judas. He was greedy. But Jesus knew that that's who was going to betray him. And by betraying him, he meant those rulers and those chief priests didn't know what he looked like. They didn't know him because he had deliberately kind of stayed away from Jerusalem. They had heard about him. They knew about him. And after the meal, I think he took maybe the 4 of them with him out into, maybe it was the Garden of Gethsemane, so that he could pray. And he asked them to stay there and pray while he went off by himself to pray. He was grieved. He was grieved because I believe he was grieved because he knew what was coming. And it was horrible. I invite you to search on your own what death by crucifixion would be like. And these people who wanted him dead and who did that were supposed to be in covenant with God Almighty. See, God's law of love was not written on their hearts. Not written on their hearts at all. They just thought if they followed the letter of the law, they'd be all right. And they tried really hard to do that. So the trial of Jesus began. He was praying, and he went back, and they had fallen asleep. About that time, a whole group of them, it's in the night, it's dark. Here comes a group with torches, and they come to find Jesus. And he said, "That's me. If that's who you're looking for, that's me." Well, apparently, to solidify that that's who it really was, Judas walked over and kissed him on the cheek. And that was the indication, that was the clue to the group that this indeed was Jesus of Nazareth. And so Peter, Simon Peter being the thunderous disciple that he was, just sure that it was going to be a kingdom, earthly kingdom, drew his sword, and he had one, and he cut off the ear of one of the, I think it might have been a soldier, I'm not sure, doesn't matter. And Jesus said, "No, no, 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 no." And he put it back on and healed it. No, this has to be. So they led him away, and they took him to the synoptic gospels give a little bit of different count about that, so you have to compare them all. One of the gospels, I believe it was John, says he was taken to Annas' house. Now that he was the father-in-law, the past chief priest, the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the present chief priest. And there was a ruling body, a judicial body of all the priests and the scribes and whatever they were, called the Sanhedrin. But before they took him before that, they took him to Annas, and I think that was how you pronounce it. I'm not quite sure enough, but he was questioned, and I think he might have even been slapped around and whatever. And of course, the disciples were scared to death. It frightened them. Of course, it would. These are not Roman, but these are the ruling body of the Jews, and they truly thought Jesus would just get out of it. Well, after he had his time there with Annas, then they sent him over to Caiaphas, and I believe it was at Caiaphas's house rather than the hall. They called it the Hall of Hewn Stone, I believe, is where the Sanhedrin always met to try these cases. I believe they were at Caiaphas's house, and it was in the night, and that was illegal. That was an illegal trial. And so they asked him, "Are you the Son of God? Do you say that you're the Son of God? You're the Messiah?" And there's a little bit different. Each gospel records that a little bit differently, but it's basically the same. And when he says in one of them, it says, "You say that I am," and then the other one says, "Yes, I am." Well, Caiaphas tore his roller. He was so mad. He was just infuriated. And he screams, "Blasphemy! We don't need anything else. He said it from his own lips. This is enough for death. Well, kill him." So they send him now over to Pilate. And Pilate was the, what was his title? The procurator of the province under Rome, maybe like the Roman governor, he was directly from Rome, and served Rome. He wasn't a Jew. They sent him over there, and they said, "He claims to be the king of the Jews." Now, that is indirect. That's going to cause an insurrection, and we want you to kill him. We want you to pronounce the death penalty. Well, apparently, let me back up. While they were at the Caiaphas's house, questioning him, Peter was in the courtyard, Simon Peter, and apparently somebody warming by the fire recognized him and said, "Well, you're with him. You're one of his disciples." And he says, "No, I don't know this man." 3 times this happened, and when it did, just as Jesus had told him, "Before the cock crows or the rooster crows 3 times, you will have denied me 3 times." And Peter says, no, I won't do that. Well, when it happened, Jesus turned and looked right at him. And I'm sure that broke Peter's heart to think that he had done just exactly what he said he wouldn't do. And isn't that the way with all of us? Our intentions are always good. Hopefully they are. And somehow or other we fall short. But you're going to find out that it's okay. Peter becomes one of the stalwarts of the new kingdom, because our God's a God of second chances. And I invite you right now, let me just get it out. There's a song years ago, probably 30 years ago, by John Francisco called "I'm Forgiven." And he tells that song, that whole story, from Peter's point of view. It is just awesome. I invite you to look it up on YouTube, listen to the words, and hear it as though it were from Peter's point of view. The trial, the crucifixion, the whole thing. Anyway, when they take him to Pilate, Pilate's in his, I think it's called a praetorium, his residence, or where he meets, and he questions Jesus, and he can't find anything wrong with him. I mean, he can't find anything worthy of death, and doesn't see that he's a real threat. And I think he does his best as an advocate to say, I can't find anything wrong with him. I don't know what y'all are here for, but I don't think he's a threat. And one of the Gospels even says that Pilate's wife even says, don't convict him. He's innocent. Well, when that happened, all those chief priests and scribes and all of them, they couldn't go in there and listen to what Pilate was asking him because they wanted to celebrate the Passover. And if they went in there with Pilate, that would make them ceremonially unclean, and they could not participate in the Passover feast, so they had to wait outside. Now that just shows you how hypocritical they were. Going by the letter of the law. Legalism. Well, so Pilate finds out that he's from Galilee, and that puts him under Herod Antipas, I believe his name was. That puts him under his rule, and he happened to be in Jerusalem for the Passover because he's a Jew. So he sends him over there to him. Well, he questions him, and he wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to see who this was that he'd been hearing about. And so while he's there, they really mistreat him. Strip him of his clothes, put a robe on him, act like he's a king, blindfolded him, slapped him, spit on him, the whole 9 yards. And then he sends him back to Pilate. And Pilate said, I'm telling you, I can't find anything wrong with him. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you all, the chief priest. He walks back outside because he has to talk to him, and he has to go outside to do that. And they've already rigged up a whole bunch of false witnesses. One of them said, I will tear down this temple in 3 days and build it back. Well, he was talking about his own body being the temple. But the charges that they had brought up on Jesus, that the chief priests of the Sanhedrin, was that he violated the Sabbath. That was, he healed on the Sabbath. That was a violation. And he threatened to destroy the temple. I told you just that about that one. Oh, and he practiced sorcery. That was healing and casting out demons, that sort of thing. Well, no, the sorcery was the healing and the raising of the dead, sorcery. And the fourth thing was he was exorcising these people by the power of the demons, because it couldn't be from God, because they couldn't do it. And number 5 was he was claiming to be the Messiah, all of which added up that he must have the death penalty. Now, I believe they had the right to stone him under their law. I believe they had that right. But no, they wanted him crucified. And Pilate said, as an act of kindness, I'll let you, here's this Barabbas or Jesus. I'll release either one. And they screamed, release Barabbas and crucify Jesus. I cannot imagine what hard hearts they were to do that. And Pilate took the water and washed his hands. He says, blood's on you, not on me. I can't find anything wrong with him. Why do you think Pilate gave in? Well, Pilate, those chief priests and those scribes, and they all screamed, he says that he is the king. And we don't have a king except Caesar. And if you let him go, Rome's going to find out about that, and you'll probably lose your job. That's basically what they were saying. And it frightened him. If there had been an uprising, because he thought that there would be an uprising, he was afraid of them. And so he caved in. Big lesson about caving in. Who was it that said all we have to do to let evil reign is for good men to do nothing? That certainly held true with Jesus and Pilate. About noon, that next day, that trial and beating and all that stuff went on all night long. And about noon the next day, after they had beaten him to the point that he was unrecognizable, they brought him out, and he gave Jesus to them to be led away to be crucified. It's no coincidence that the Lord had me doing this video, these presentations, very close to 1923's Easter, which would be, I believe it's April the 9th, in another week or so. I invite you, if you watch this, go read the Gospels. Go read about that horrific event. Just go read about it. And I'll see you next time.